This really has explosive potential. In an emergency meeting, Jack Mallers addresses the world. And to the Bitcoin community, he issues a viral Bitcoin warning. That's really going around the internet right now. People are completely losing it here, and it's going back and forth. He says a US Bitcoin reserve is crucial. Ignoring it endangers prosperity. Is one of the most important announcements in American history. Ignoring this means recklessly putting prosperity at risk. Those are words from him that really hit home, and he really urges everyone to share this video widely. Because it's really intense, the kind of feces being thrown out here. Also, make sure to subscribe here so that Bitcoin can spread into the world, so that people understand what it's all about. He talks about how all the economic announcements in the US have been very, very negatively charged so far. 1933, the gold standard. 1971, the Nixon shock by abolishing the gold standard. 2008, the bailout packages where in the end the saver was the big loser. And now we have a potential announcement here that could turn everything upside down, that could literally flip the world on its head. If a strategic Bitcoin reserve is established here in the U.S., Jack Mallers says that even the future of the US depends on this decision, because the US is a free country, or at least presents itself as a free country. And as a free country, you can't afford not to have a Bitcoin reserve. He also warns about many actors who are trying to undermine the whole thing. There are massive attacks trying to prevent that. Because they don't want a free world here, but because they'd rather keep ruling in their socialist temple here. And they want to push the old fiat mechanisms forward. He's decoding the key roles here, and how Bitcoin is being systematically undermined here. This is really a video that packs a punch. It's hard to beat. I'm going to show you the whole video now, and I'll interrupt it every now and then. It's all translated into German. The original is in English, but it's really crazy. What's coming to the surface here?
Okay, emergency press conference. Ripple undermines American prosperity and freedom. I can confirm that Ripple is actively spending millions of dollars to undermine a strategic Bitcoin reservoir in the United States of America. This is not just an attack on Bitcoin, but also on principles of transparency, fairness, and our national security. Strategic Bitcoin reservoir would be one of the most important economic announcements in American history. I would personally compare it to Nixon in 1941. However, it would be the first positive economic announcement to come out of the United States in the last 100 years. In 1933, the USA made an economic announcement. What was that? We're seizing your gold standard. In 1971, the USA made an economic announcement. What was that? We're separating from the gold standard. We're breaking away from being governed by the immutable laws of nature. So we can devalue your money and inflate your life. In 2008, the USA made an economic announcement. What was that? It was that we would rescue and protect private companies, banks, and Wall Street at your expense. To the audience, rescue and protect. When the USA makes an economic announcement that supports a strategic Bitcoin reserve, will not act against the interests. It's in the best interest of the public. It will have the opposite effect.
So he's basically saying here, it's in the best interest of the US government, the citizens of the entire US, but of course just as much in the Western countries. It's in the best interest of the EU, of Germany, of France, Italy. Can we go through all the countries? Basically global, worldwide, all countries in the world have one thing in common, that there's a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Not a strategic Bitcoin reservoir as it's translated here, but a strategic Bitcoin reserve is in the interest. Every country is also in the interest of the US here. And he makes it pretty clear that this announcement is ultimately so important. And that is ultimately the decisive factor. Whether a country sets itself up freely for the next 100 years or just doesn't set itself up freely. And he even goes so far as to criticize the politicians here, or the leaders, that if you don't make this decision, you're consciously giving up on prosperity. Of course, you could say, okay, maybe some politicians just don't get it. But Jack Mallers goes so far as to say that it's even about the national security of a country, for the national stability of a country, for the economic stability of a country, and maybe even the health of a country. What's essential here is that Bitcoin is implemented. And those are such important words that every politician should take a look at now. Every leader, but also every citizen, who might think that he has nothing to decide right now. This should indeed also sink in. But that also means that attempts like the digital euro in the EU. And so, that of course also means that kind of thing here. It means that you're recklessly putting the prosperity of the citizens at risk. So, he has already made the relevance of such a strategic Bitcoin reserve pretty clear. Made it somewhat clear. Now, in the next part, he's going to talk about the fairness of Bitcoin, how it's basically distributed, how Bitcoin came into the world. Like, let's say the distribution ratios are compared to fiat currencies, and a lot more pulls you in. So it's crazy what's going on here. Jack Mallers laying all out.
This is money that is owned, operated, and managed by the people. Governments and companies own a fraction of this network. Who owns it? Who had access first? The people, the public. It's about being pro-industry, pro-jobs, pro-energy, pro-growth, pro-technology. It's about solving our deficits. It's about investing in the future, creating prosperity for future generations, equality, inclusion, the leadership of the free world, acknowledge, to embrace the American ideals, promote, a money that we don't control but that we support. This helps to solve the biggest problems in our country, as well as promote the world we want to see as Americans and its people.
Why doesn't something like this actually run on public broadcasting here? This is really relevant to the system. What Jack Mallers is putting out there. Supporting Bitcoin here indeed means being pro-technology, pro-growth, pro-freedom, pro-equality, and pro-inclusion. And what are we doing? We're basically against freedom, we're against technology. We'd rather use a horse than get into a car or a rocket. And that's really the hubris we live in. I'm specifically talking about Germany and the EU now, because they're obviously much further away from his strategic Bitcoin reserve. The US is obviously much closer to that. And that's basically it. What we have to understand now is that if Germany, for example, does not join in and does not give us a strategic Bitcoin reserve, if it doesn't happen in the EU, if the ECB doesn't understand it. And as soon as Donald Trump understands this, and he's basically in touch with the crypto team here, they're going to evaluate whether to set up a Bitcoin reserve or a shitcoin reserve or whatever else they might do. But that means if the US goes ahead with it and the EU or Germany doesn't, then that means the US is positioning itself as pro-technology, pro-growth, pro-freedom, pro-equality, and pro-inclusion. And the EU with its Euro shitcoin, they're basically doing the exact opposite. And that's basically the key point you need to take away from this. And now we really get to the most explosive part, because Jack Mallers is going to dive into that. 1. Who the players are that are currently trying to prevent a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Why there are interests here to stop this, and why some people prefer to maintain the status quo. They'd rather support the current system. They want to keep it going. Instead of standing up for freedom, technology, equality, inclusion, growth, and all that kind of stuff, and justice.
Ripple is a profit-driven company. It prints its own token in XRP. And it calls on the U.S. government to support its monopoly. Why does the U.S. government support private interests? Obsessive currency. That's corporate lobbying disguised as innovation. That's corporate lobbying disguised as technology, growth, jobs, industry. Ripple created all its currency itself. They issued it themselves and are relying on the public to buy it. That's not money for the people. That's not in the best interest of the public. That's in the best interest of a private company. This is an economic announcement. That would be like 2008. That would be like 1901. That would be like 1930. That goes against what this new government and President Trump stand for. This is against the best interests of the United States of America. It's really absurd and ridiculous, and Ripple needs to step down immediately. They not only undermine the future prosperity of the United States, which benefits from technological innovation Bitcoin offers, but they do. They're also trying to take advantage of the situation and gain an edge for themselves. Call reps. There's a call for an investigation into Ripple's lobbying efforts. Tweet publicly. Post your comments publicly. I started to stand up for myself. I won't stand for that. I'm American. I plan to have kids and raise them in America. I won't allow it. That Ripple undermines our prosperity, our freedom, and the utility of Bitcoin as the neutral, fair money for the people. Undermines the public. Because this isn't just about Bitcoin versus Ripple. It's about whether the future of money belongs to the people or to private companies. And it's up to us to decide.
The speech is just so incredibly crazy. I'm getting it here. Goosebumps. The most relevant sentence being said here is right at the end. It's about the future of money. And it's about that. Whether the future of money is Bitcoin, or if the future of money is in the hands of private companies. And you really need to think about this now. Whether you want companies or foundations to basically control money in the future, just like they do now. The ECB controls the money. Could it be like that later? So is it going to be Ripple then? Or any other foundations? It doesn't have to just be targeting Ripple. You can also bring in other central entities here. They also want to back up the Bitcoin reserve here. That then want to say, and oh, we don't want decentralized money, but we prefer centralized money. And the question that really arises here. We are really at a turning point here. And the turning point and the big question that everyone has to ask themselves now. Do you want a decentralized future or do you want a centralized future? We've seen it over the last 100, 200, 300 years again and again, that we've had a whole lot of centralist projects. And one after another, these centralist projects have failed. And now we have, for the first time in human history, here's the alternative that we focus on a decentralized world here. We can focus on switching things up, saying, no, we don't want any more bosses, we don't want any more leaders, we don't want any more laggards, but we also don't want any Ripple CEOs or anyone in charge of some Ripple Foundation or anything like that. And yes, you can use it as a private toy and so on, but you can't build the future of our money on that. Because the prosperity of a nation depends on it, the freedom of a nation depends on it, the economic growth of a nation depends on it. That depends on the technology, the innovation of a nation. And that's basically exactly what Jack Mallers wants to say here. Yeah, play around with your shitcoin games. But when it comes to the question of the future of money, it's really important for you to know this. Whether you want yourselves up in a decentralized or centralized way, I'm definitely going with a decentralized approach here. With Bitcoin, that's at least my statement on that. Buy Bitcoin at 21 Bitcoin, code 21 Bitcoin, where you can easily and safely buy Bitcoin. And here, with the code Bitcoin, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Really awesome. I'm at a loss for words. Let me know what you think about that. See you soon. Peace out.